Hey, so maybe you've wondered what happens if I move to Portugal with my family and somebody needs to go to the ER and we don't have a car. This is your lucky day, I will tell you. So I've had quite a few lost in translation moments in the medical system, which is why I wanted to make this video for you, because I want you to understand like how the process is supposed to go so that at least some of the things you can know ahead of time. But there are always things that you aren't going to really know, and so stick around to the end of the video to see what that looked like for us in this situation, and comment with any questions that you have for me. I'm happy to answer them. So first of all, we had a situation where it wasn't like bleeding profusely emergency, but it was like need to go to the ER because it needs to be attended to emergency, but nobody's like about to lose their life. So this is for higher than urgent care because you need an x-ray, but lower than I'm bleeding profusely from some part of my body. If you are bleeding profusely, you need to call 112, and that would be like 911. My kiddo the other day fell pretty hard on his arm, and he is almost 15. It was late in the evening. We have insurance here in Portugal, private insurance, that we had to get in the very beginning before we even were approved for our visas and everything, for the D7 visa, which now it would be the digital nomad visa. So for us, we have found it most easy to use the COOF private hospital network because they're all over the country. They're pretty easy to get online and schedule your appointments with. You can do some appointments, obviously not emergency. You can do some appointments online. They take our insurance, which is called Medis, M-E-D-I-S. So that's the insurance that we use here in Portugal. So for my family of 7, it's worked out really well. I have another video on healthcare costs and private insurance cost and coverage up here. So if you are more interested in that, you can check that out. So we live in a town that doesn't have a private hospital. We are 45 minutes from a COOF hospital, and that's the one that we've just figured out how to navigate, and so that's the easiest thing for us to do in a situation like this. We didn't have like an exposed bone or anything, but he was in a lot of pain, but not so much that he couldn't sleep. We were icing it, and we ended up deciding in the morning, okay, I think we're gonna go see, because we're afraid there's a fracture because of the pain. At that point, you have some options. If you don't have a car, you can pay for somebody to drive you there, which would be very expensive, or you can take a bus. And the COOF hospital is in the town of Torres Vedras, and it's about 45 minutes. The bus ride is about 55 minutes. So what we needed to do was buy our bus tickets and then take the bus, and then the bus makes stops down to Torres Vedras, which you can see here in this video, just what that experience is like, just riding along. And then because of where the bus station is in that city, then we had to take a cab. We just took an Uber. So that took like 5 minutes. Once we got to the hospital, I want you to understand what a typical COOF ER looks like. This is the pediatric ER at Torres Vedras Hospital. And the pediatric emergency room at that particular location is open from 9 a.m. until I don't remember what time at night, but it's it's open during the day. It's not a 24-hour one. Now, you could take a child there if you needed to, I think, and take them to the adult emergency room, but they're not going to be pediatric specialists. And so I'm not really sure how that works, because we went during the daytime because we needed to take a bus. So the way that it works when you walk in is you walk up to this machine that I'm going to show you, and you have the chance to put in your fiscal number. You don't have to, but that's a way of identifying yourself to the system, is to put in your NIF number. So I put in my NIF number, and then I looked at the options, and you could use your Google Translate if you needed to figure out which of the options to choose. Many times in Portugal, you get in the queue by going to a machine like that, choosing the option that you want, and taking your number. So that number is really important. You're gonna have it through your whole entire visit at the hospital. But you do that, and then what happens is you look up on the board. There's an electronic board, and there's two sides to it. So on one side, it will tell you which desk to go to, like which desk number. So after you enter that you have arrived, you're going to take a number, and then you're going to be waiting to see, like, okay, which desk do they want me to go to? So there's lots of dings and noises when they change numbers on the screen. And on the left side of the screen, that will be for going up to the desk at the very beginning. So the first thing that you're going to pay attention to is the left side of the screen, and it will tell you which desk to go up to. If you don't speak Portuguese very well, you can greet them for the time of the day, and you can say, like, Desculpe, estou a aprender português, I'm learning Portuguese, or you can say, Desculpe, falo inglês, and that just means sorry, do you speak English? Because I find, especially in medical situations, the Portuguese that I know tends to go out the window anyway, just because I'm like higher stress, and so it's always a challenging experience. Now, you will find enough English at the hospitals, definitely from providers, but usually somebody can help you if you're sort of in a freak out mode and you've forgotten all of your Portuguese, or you don't know it in the first place. So at that desk, they will take some of your numbers. Like, they'll want to see your passport for the person who is needing to be seen. They will maybe want to know your fiscal number. So just what I do is keep on my phone a list of all the numbers. Oh, they'll want your insurance card number for that specific child. I didn't have my Medish card for him with me, so I looked for the Medish number, and I told them which insurance we had and what the number was for that particular child. So then after that, you keep your number that you got from the machine in the beginning, and you go sit down and you wait. And then on the right side of the screen, you will see numbers that are going to send you to get your care done. So once your number pops up, it'll say like Triage 2, and that will be where you do the intake. You speak to a nurse, you tell them the situation, and then they send you back out to the waiting room because they're filing you in like how urgent is your situation. So you can see in this image there's like different urgency, like red, green, blue. If it's not a bleeding, really urgent situation, you know, they'll put you down at a certain level. So we were second from the bottom because while he was in pain, it wasn't excruciating pain, and there was no wound that was obvious. He needed an x-ray, really, is what he needed. So then after you go to triage, you'll come back to the waiting room, and then you'll wait to see what they say, gabinete, which means the doctor room. Once your number comes up again and it says gabinete, you'll walk to the hallway that has all the rooms and you'll look for the number. And something that's interesting in Portugal is like a lot of times the door will be like almost closed or even closed. And once you've been called, you can assume that it's okay to go in that room. I still haven't figured out the etiquette, like whether we need to knock or whether we just open. But anyway, you go in the room, there will be a doctor sitting in the room, and then you can explain your situation. In our case, we actually had a doctor who spoke Spanish and Portuguese, but not English. I've forgotten a lot of my Spanish now that I've been learning Portuguese, but my Portuguese is not great, especially for like explaining medical things, right? I can get by in the grocery store, but getting by in a medical situation with medical terminology is just a whole different experience. So she sent us actually back into the hall, not to the waiting room, and we just sort of stood around awkwardly until a doctor who spoke English could take us. So that's usually how it works. I just want you to understand if you're in process with your language or you're just here visiting, that's what could happen. So then we went in, we explained the situation. She was like, okay, I understand. Yes, you need an x-ray. So then next, remember, we still keep the same number the whole time. So don't lose your paper like I tend to do. She was like, okay, you go down one level to the x-ray level and sit in that waiting room, and then they will call you. And by call you, they mean your number will come up again on the right side of the screen that's downstairs. Most of the time, you don't need to check in again at another desk. I say that, and there have been occasions where I think for blood work, you do have to check in again and like get in the queue again. When you're already in the system and they're sending you for an x-ray, you're not having to go back to a check-in desk again. So you're down there, you're waiting for your number to come up on the right side of the screen, and then it'll say like x-ray room, whatever, number, whatever. And so then you go in the hallway next to that waiting room, and they take your kid back. Eli was old enough, and so I sat in the hallway, and they did his x-ray. What you're going to need to do in this ER kind of situation is if they send you for another test, like an x-ray or an ultrasound or whatever, you're going to be coming back to the original waiting room and waiting for the doctor that you saw to call you back in after they see your results. So we went back upstairs, we sat in the waiting room again, and you're still looking on the right side of the screen at this point for your number to show up, and it will say again, gabinete. Thankfully, in our situation, it was not broken, it was just a bad sprain. And here is where the story gets interesting in a cross-cultural kind of way. So, after she told us, yay, it's only a bad sprain, it's not anything, it's not broken, it's not fractured, I asked her, can we have a school paper? And she was like, okay, yep, that's something that you get at the front desk. It's called a justificação. No, justification. It's where they say this child was here at this hospital from this time to this time. And Portuguese love their paperwork. Portuguese school systems love their paperwork. So if you need to get your child excused from school, you can ask the doctor's office always for a justificação. If they are giving you something to go home with, the doctor is not usually the one who gives that thing to you or teaches you how to use it. So then you go back to a waiting room and you wait for your number to be called again or your name to be called. Maybe this was the point at which we were in the waiting room and like we're waiting and nothing was happening. And so we just sort of stood around in the hallway. This is important. Everything takes a long time, but if you start to feel like maybe you got lost in the process and they don't remember that you're there anymore, usually what you can do is just like stand awkwardly at the door of the waiting room until the doctor who saw you is going to notice that you're there and be like, oh, you're still here? Yeah, this is hot tips for Portugal. The number system works really well until you're doing something that's a little outside the box, and then the system sometimes loses you. Now, this could have been because I thought we were leaving really soon, and so I had the justificação printed from the front desk, and maybe they closed us out. So it's possible that's what happened, because the doctor had told us, like, hey, go ahead back to the front desk because you can get your paper and you can also make this other appointment. And so it might have been my mistake that I didn't wait till the very, 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 very end to get the justificação. Also, you're going to want to wait till the very, very end until everything has happened, because that will show a longer period of time. And if you're staying for 3 hours, you want to be able to prove that to the school, especially if you like miss a whole day or whatever. So anyway, we stood awkwardly in the hallway, and they're like, oh, yep, okay. The nurse is gonna see you and help you with this brace, but I don't think it's gonna be big enough for him because he's a really tall kid. He's over 6 foot. And sure enough, like, they tried to put the brace, but because it's the pediatric ER and he's like grown-up size, like the brace was just too small. So they were like, okay, you're gonna need to go down the street and around the corner to the orthopedic shop, and at the orthopedic shop they should give it to you for free because you're coming from the hospital. And they were like, oh, we'll give you a piece of paper so that it will be free. It's just so complicated because it was supposed to come from the ER. But because it didn't come from the ER, because they didn't have the right size, they said we could get it for free, but then the place was closing anyway. So we were just like, okay, we're waiting for this paper that says that we can have a free brace. That's where we really, really got lost in the system and waited and waited and waited and waited and waited, and nobody ever came back for us. So then we stood awkwardly in the hall again. And they were like, wait, what? You're still here? I mean, because this was like, everything was moving fairly good. And then at that point, there was a miscommunication, we came to find out, between the nurse and the doctor, and the nurse never came back to us. So anyway, we waited for like 45 minutes extra for a piece of paper while we were like looking at the next bus was already going to be gone, and then the orthopedic place was going to be closed, and then we're like, okay, we should just go back to Peniche and like try the pharmacy. So whatever. I mean, I know in the States going to the ER takes a really long time too. I think we were there about 3 hours, but then of course we had like the hour bus ride there and then the hour bus ride home. It was pretty much a whole day event until like late afternoon, because we missed the one bus because they forgot about us, and so then we had to wait, an extra 45 minutes for another bus. This is real life in Portugal. But with my insurance, I got the bill, which included the whole visit and included the x-ray. It did not include the brace because the pharmacy made us pay for it. But it was 55 euros. So that's like less than $65 for a whole emergency room visit with x-ray. So that feels pretty good. That was how our day went. It was one of those times where I think in the past I would have gotten really overwhelmed, but because I sort of knew the process, like I was not as nervous as I had been in the past, and I hope that that's how you will feel going into this situation, because you've seen a few of the things, you sort of know what to expect, and I hope that that can relieve some stress for you. If you are coming to visit Portugal for long term, or if you are planning on moving here, I would love to answer questions for you. If you just have questions about daily life stuff like this, I feel like, you know, Portugal's all about the beautiful tile roofs and the wonderful views, and like even the benefit of not having to have a car, because it's Europe and there is more public transportation, although Portugal doesn't have nearly as much as other countries. But stuff like this is, you really feel like you're in a pinch, or it's just this big long process. Thankfully, we don't have to go to the ER very often, and it's very good medical care. I feel very confident and comfortable that the care that we receive in the private hospitals, I can only speak to the private hospitals because we haven't been in the public system. I do know that it's a lot slower and more chaotic in the public system, just because that's the free system here to anyone who's a resident or a citizen. That's similar throughout Europe. I think if you go the private hospital route, it's a lot calmer, it's less busy, but it costs money. And then if you go the public route, then it's free as far as I know. But because we have insurance, and because we had to have it in the beginning, and that's the system we learned, and because we're really not going to be fluent for a while, the private option just made a lot more sense for our family and my capacity, even as a mom, just to figure out new things and navigate new systems. Yeah. Let me know what questions you have about Portugal everyday life. I did a video recently about driving here. Play it on 1.5. It's sort of verbose, but there's just a lot of things to explain about driving in Portugal. So I wanted to share those things with you so that they won't be a mystery to you when you move here or when you visit long term. I'm Andy, I'm a mom of 5, and I have been living in Portugal almost 4 years. I have been living outside the States since 2019. And I want to remind you to dare to truly live and figure out what matters to you in this life and go do it. See you later.